Welcome, everybody, to Chalk Talk tonight, another live edition with myself here as I break down the first round of the CFP playoffs. I'm going to get into Bill Belichick. I want to get into some coaching moves. I'll give you some predictions. As always, if you're watching on any of the social media channels, I appreciate the follow. If you have any comments, questions, put in any of the comment boxes. I'll try to pull some over here tonight. Next week, I do not believe next week I'm going to do a show with Christmas. I'll let you know about Sunday in the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch if we're going to give that a go this weekend or not, but I'll definitely make sure I keep everybody posted. If you're up on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're already subscribed, thank you. Share it. Try to get as many subscribers as I can. New for me is I'm on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Music for podcasting as well. So if you like the audio parts, I appreciate the follows as well on that. So without further ado, I want to get into some of the coaching moves. And the first one I want to get into, a lot of people saw the news with Bill Belichick coming from the NFL, six-time Super Bowl champ coming to North Carolina. And a lot of people, I think, said, so North Carolina gets rid of 73-year-old Mac Brown and now hires 72-year-old Bill Belichick. And I had to think about this move for a little while because a lot of people said, will this work? Will it not work? And here's what I was thinking. I think you're going to see a lot of head coaches in college be coordinators. So, like if you look at Gus Malzahn, who was the head coach at Central Florida, just left to go to Florida State to be the offensive coordinator. I think you're going to see more of that. Like we saw Chip Kelly go from UCLA to Ohio State. Which I do think Chip Kelly was probably on the verge of getting fired as the head coach at UCLA and probably took the easy way out and went to Ohio State, still getting paid $2-3 million a year to be the coordinator there. But I think you're going to see more head coaches in college be coordinators because they don't want to deal with the NIL. And I think the flip side is I think you're going to see more NFL guys come to college as head coaches. Because I do think college football today with the NIL, I think it's more like the NFL. You got general managers of teams. You have the NIL. You got players that are making millions of dollars. So I do think it'll work with Bill Belichick. Now, some people are going to say he was like 30 wins, or actually, I'm looking at my notes. He was only 14 wins away from passing Don Shula. And Shula had 347 wins. Belichick's at 333 to be the all-time winningest coach in the NFL. His clause in his contract with North Carolina is pretty interesting. Because after, I think, June of 25, his buyout is pretty low, which would leave the door open for him to go back to the NFL. Now, he's going to probably bring NFL guys with him. His son's going to probably come with him. I haven't seen any hirings yet that he's made on his staff, but you'd have to think his son's going to come with him because I think part of his contract said that when his tenure is done, the 3 years, when he leaves, his son's the head coach in waiting. So you'd have to think his son's coming. And then, I don't know, people are, excuse me, people are saying Matt Patricia maybe, who was with him in the NFL from Sherrill, New York. Maybe coming in. So we'll see who he hires. His dad was an assistant coach for North Carolina back in the 50s. But I do think this has a shot to work because I liked everything Bill Belichick said. He said, you know, with the NIL, he's going to run it like if you're a college player in the portal. And we saw this with Deion Sanders. Deion's been able to get people out of the portal, and he's been able to win games. And he's done a fantastic job turning Colorado around. Now you're going to get Bill Belichick. And I still think, and I saw a post on Twitter tonight, that there's still a chance. And I know that the AD at Ohio State came out and backed and supported Ryan Day and said, Ryan Day's our coach no matter what happens in the playoffs. Okay. I don't buy it. If you buy it, you're crazy because if they lose Saturday night in Columbus, I think they walk him off the field and he's out of a job. But we'll go with the AD. Well, I support Ryan Day. He's our coach. I still think you're going to see Mike Vrabel, whose name continues to get mentioned. And I think, you know, the other day I was watching the Pat McAfee show, and they had Dan Orlovsky on with McAfee, and McAfee said there's a name still out there that will be coaching somewhere next year. He said it's Mike Vrabel, and Dan Orlovsky said Mike Vrabel knows where he's going already. He just hasn't come out and said anything. Now, McAfee said, "Is that the NFL or is it college?" And Orlovsky didn't say a word. He goes, "I'm not a reporter. I'm not, I'm not going to release that. I don't know," which tells me I think he's waiting to see what goes on in Columbus. I really do. I said 2 years ago on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch on the radio, I said, if I'm Ohio State, and this is when Jim Harbaugh was there, the knock on the Buckeyes against Michigan is they're not physical. The team that runs the ball more in that game has won that game for like the last 25 years. And the knock is Ohio State's not physical against Michigan. Who's the one guy out there you say to yourself, if Ryan Day's not the coach at Ohio State, they get all the recruits, they have the money, they spent $22 million to keep that team intact. And I know Michigan just spent $12 million on a quarterback. I'm okay with it. That to me doesn't mean anything because you still got to coach kids, you still got to develop, you still got to go win games. You're basically throwing an all-star team together and saying, let's go see if this thing works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm okay with all that stuff now in the portal. I do feel sorry for the little schools that don't have the money that some of these big schools have. It's crazy. But who's the one guy out there that you would say, Urban Meyer ain't coming back? I know there's rumors about him. He's not coming back to Columbus. Jim Tressel's not coming back to Columbus. So who do you get? It's like the NFL. All the NFL does is recycle coaches. You hear the same names up for jobs every year. So one guy gets fired from Carolina. Next thing you know, he's with the Bears. He lasts 2 years, then they fire him. Is there a hot coordinator in the NFL that's up for a head job? Probably you'll see that. The Ryan Days, the Chip Kellys. Chip Kelly was already in the NFL. So I go back and say to myself, I want toughness, Ohio State. Who's out there? I think Mike Vrabel's a home run hire for Ryan Day. I don't even care if Ryan Day goes through and wins the national championship. I would have got rid of him on the spot because he can't beat Michigan. But going back to Bill Belichick, I think it could work. He said, I'm going to run it like an NFL program. There's going to be NFL schemes, NFL coaches. And again, with the NIL, he can run it like the NFL. He hired a general manager that's got NFL experience. So if you're a kid in the portal, North Carolina's got all this money. Here's what I don't understand about all this NIL stuff. A coach gets fired, and then next thing you know, you read on Twitter in the media and it says, well, North Carolina's going to up its NIL. Well, why the hell didn't you do that when Mac Brown was there? Is it now because you got Bill Belichick that's the high-profile name like Colorado? I don't know how much money Colorado has. When Deion Sanders got hired, they didn't even have the money to pay him. They knew and took Deion's word, and Deion said, I'm going to build it because he believes we coming, and he's going to fill the stadium. It's going to be, businesses, everything in the area is going to go up. They're going to sell shirts. They're going to sell everything. Well, that worked out really good. They paid Deion, and I still don't know what he's making. Maybe $3-4 million a year. He's worth a hell of a lot more than that to Colorado. But anyways, I think Bill Belichick can work in college. I really do. Now, if he stays there 2-3 years, I don't know. He was up for the Atlanta job last year, didn't get it. I don't know if maybe, Bill wants full control over a team and teams aren't willing to give him full control. I don't know. Brady left after the year and went and won a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. And I think Bill Belichick deep down wants one more shot at it. I thought he would have been the Dallas coach. And now I'm hearing that, we don't know what's going on with Mike McCarthy at the end of the year. If they fire him, Dallas job's open. He's got a good relationship with Jerry Jones. But I do think there's a really good shot this thing works with Bill Belichick. North Carolina's a good job. They got a lot of money, great facilities, ACC. I think it could work. The other one I want to give a shout out to my old ball coach, Dave Clawson, Wake Forest, after 11 seasons, is stepping down on his own terms. Let me repeat that, on his own terms. Is stepping down after 11 seasons, 7 bowl games, They were ranked in the top 10 in 2021 into 25 seasons he spent as a head coach. And let me just read this number to you. He's the only coach in Division One to lead 4 different programs to 10-win seasons. Fordham, where I was, in the first year under Coach Clausen, we didn't win a game. But then we won 11 games and made the playoffs. Richmond, he played for a national championship at Richmond. Bowling Green, he took over a disaster and turned Bowling Green into a bowl team. And Wake Forest wasn't bad, but they struggled a little bit before he got there. And what he's been able to do there. So that Wake Forest has been, I thought this was an interesting stat. They've been to 17 bowl games. Coach Clausen's been to 7 of them out of the 17. Maybe think about it. That's a pretty impressive number at Wake Forest, which is small school, academic. You got to be really smart to get in there. Coach Clausen's had a history with Fordham and Wake. Richmond's even a good academic school. Dave Clausen did it the right way. And when you think of Coach Clausen, and people have heard me talk about him for the last 10 years, I've been on the radio and doing these podcasts now the last couple of years. I've talked about him because he's always done it the right way. And he's well respected in the coaching industry. And he's going to stay on as an advisor to the athletic director, I believe. And, maybe take a year off. And he's still young. Maybe he takes a year off and gets the itch back, or maybe goes into broadcast. Whatever he does, he's going to be successful because that's just who he is. But I go back and I look at the Jay Wrights. I look at the Roy Williams, Coach K. You look at Chip Kelly. You look at some of these guys who retired, and more so, I guess, the basketball field, right? When you look at Jay Wright, great basketball coach, Coach K, the all-time greatest basketball coach that I've seen in my days. And you look and you say to yourself, they don't want to deal with the NIL stuff. Like, college sports isn't what it used to be with this NIL, the portal. And I do think that if you look at what Colorado's done, like, you can build a team in a year. If you didn't have the transfer portal, throw that thing out. Like, you're not building Colorado in 2 years. There's no way. You got to recruit high school kids. Maybe you get a junior college transfer or whatever it might be, and you got a couple years. Now it's like with this transfer portal, if you don't win within like your first 2-3 years, you're looking for another job, which I think is crazy because you don't even give the coach enough time to really coach. But, you put these teams together in a portal, you go get these players, and it's basically like, okay, you got to see if it works. And then during the season, if a kid's not playing, you got to be saying to yourself, well, geez, Jimmy ain't playing a lot and paying him, and he's probably going to leave at the end of this season. The transfer portal opens up this week. Boom, you got, kids that are jumping in. At Washington State's entire staff. Jake Dicker just got the head job at Wake Forest. So Washington State's without a head coach, both coordinators, running backs coach, secondary coach. Like 20 kids have hit the transfer portal. By the way, they're playing Syracuse in the Holiday Bowl, which I just read a thing today that bowl game is still going to go on. So Syracuse is going to be basically playing a JV team in the bowl game. So Syracuse should destroy Washington State unless they cancel this game if more players opt out. But I've been told that's not going to happen. They confirmed this morning with Washington State, the athletic director, and they said, we're going to play. But again, you go back to this and you say, these coaches that have been in it for so long, like Coach Clausen at Wake for 11 years, you don't really see coaches stay that long in one program anymore because they're there 3-4 years. Maybe they get fired, or maybe they jump around, or they go to a smaller, whatever it may be. But I really believe that Coach Clausen didn't want to deal with the pressure, the NIL, to say, Wake Forest doesn't have a lot of money. Maybe they do, and I don't want to put words in the Wake Forest's mouth because I'm not there. I don't see it. But if it's a matter of me trying to recruit a kid to Wake Forest or go to Florida State or Alabama or Michigan, Ohio State, I would imagine they can't compete. But college sports is just so different. And college football is going to miss Dave Clausen. And I hope Coach has a good year. I hope he's happy. I know I watched this press conference and going to spend more time with the family. And that's a tough life. It's a really tough life to live. Think about it. He's been to Fordham, then to Richmond, then Bowling Green, and he spent the last 11 years at Wake Forest. But you bounce around as a coach, and you got to have a really good wife that's really supportive of that lifestyle. And then if you have kids, kids go to school in one place and they bounce around. So you got to have a really special um, family to help you get through that. And he has, which is great. And they just hired Jake Dicker, the coach from Washington State, um, which I think is a good hire. I think Washington State's been really good the last couple of years. So we'll see what he does if he can translate that over at Wake Forest. The tough part about Wake and a lot of those schools is the academics. It's really high academic standards to get into Wake Forest. So I think that's always going to be a challenge, but he's done it the right way. He's always been good to me when I've reached out to him. And when this settles down, I'll reach out to him to see if I can get him on, and him and I will, we'll talk and catch up. But Coach, if you're watching, and you were great for college football, and I know college football is going to miss you tremendous, and you impacted a lot of players' lives, and we really appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you did for me, even after Fordham. So congratulations. I'm not going to say on retirement, but I'm going to wish you well. And college football is going to miss you, Coach. So best of luck to you. Well, we got to get into some of these college football playoff games that start Friday night. And I'm going to tell you on my screen, behind the scenes here, I already picked these games, which I'll give you my picks at the end. But the last time I did this, I talked myself into switching one of my picks. So I'm going to try not to do that this time. But I do think I might, because there's got to be an upset somewhere in these picks. Maybe not. I think a lot of these are going to depend on matchups. The first one I want to talk about a little bit is the Indiana-Notre Dame game, which the state of Indiana, Notre Dame's going to be rocking. This game's Friday night. Notre Dame's a touchdown favorite. And these lines are big lines. And they're not like 10, 12, but like 7, 8 to me, I think is a big line at this point in time in the season in a playoff game. And this is going to be a really good game because Indiana struggled against, well, Ohio State beat them in Columbus. They beat Michigan, but they struggled up front against both those teams. They made a lot of mistakes against Ohio State, and that ended up costing them that game in Columbus. Indiana's got the best rush defense in the country. They're really physical up front. Notre Dame at times has struggled in pass protection. They struggled at times to run the football, and I think they've been a lot better. I think Riley Leonard, you're probably going to get Riley Leonard maybe 8, 9 carries a game against Indiana. The key to me is going to be, can Indiana win the trenches? If Indiana plays a really good game, perfect game, I think they can beat Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's one of the hottest teams in the country. And of course, as I said the last couple of weeks on this show, is everybody is going to think about Notre Dame's loss to NIU. They're going to say, well, Northern Illinois beat them. Well, that was earlier in the year, and I think Notre Dame has figured it out. I think offensively they figured it out with Riley Leonard. They're physical up front. They play really good defense. They're good against the run. The question for me with Notre Dame is, and I think it's always been this way for as long as I can remember, what do they have on the outside? Do they have the speed and the weapons? Because listen, Indiana's got athletes. I know people are going to say it's Indiana. I really think Indiana can go in to South Bend and beat Notre Dame. Do I think it'll happen? I don't know. Both defenses are really good. Both defenses are top 10 scoring defenses in the country. I think Indiana's front is going to be a front that Notre Dame hasn't seen. Listen to this. This is Indiana's offensive line. And I looked at this the other night. 312, 317, 320, 315, 290. That's the offensive line for Indiana. Notre Dame has not faced a front like Indiana's. And it's kind of even weird to even think about this when you say Indiana's front. But yeah, Indiana's front is really good. And I do think all these games, when you talk about them, the common denominator is who's going to run the football and who's going to be able to stop the run. And I think at times Notre Dame hasn't been able to run. And at times, Notre Dame has struggled in pass protection for Riley Leonard. Indiana's got two really good defensive ends. It's a really good front. It's a really good front seven, for Indiana. I think if Indiana can play a game where they don't make many mistakes, O'Rourke, the quarterback, can throw the ball. He's a big game kid. He's a senior. I think he's going to have a really good game against Notre Dame. I'm not going to pick this game until the end, but I think Marcus Freeman, who just got an extension, is one of the best up-and-coming coaches in college football. He's another one that if Ryan Day left, I think Ohio State will pick the phone up and call Marcus Freeman, who played at Ohio State. So at least he probably would listen. But Notre Dame just gave him a huge extension for, I think, 3 or 4 years. I don't have the number in front of me, but I know he just got an extension. So can Indiana run the football? Can Notre Dame not only run the football, but can Notre Dame protect Riley Leonard will be the question. And the key to me, too, is going to be on first and second down. Are you going to be third and long behind the sticks, for Riley Leonard? If they have to throw the ball, and I think this is going to be the knock on Notre Dame, we haven't seen a game this year because their schedule has been really weak this season. Notre Dame had to loss to Northern Illinois. They beat USC. And I was looking at their schedule. They really didn't play a tough schedule, so they really haven't been battle tested. Now, Indiana's been in big games, right? You can say the Ohio State game, which was you beat Ohio State, you go to the Big Ten playoff, you got a chance at a bye. Was a really big game in front of 100,000 people. They played Michigan. After those two teams, Indiana really hasn't played anybody this year. So I think both teams, whoever can get off to the really, really quick start, and if Indiana comes out and they can score, Notre Dame's in for a game on Friday night. But I think Notre Dame's one of the hotter teams going. And I think, if they can find a way to run the football, so Riley Leonard does not have to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game, I think Notre Dame can run away with this game. And the winner of this game is going to get Georgia. We don't know what the hell's going on with Carson Beck. That's going to be a huge question for Georgia fans in this playoff. How far can they go without him? And I'll be honest with you, I don't think Georgia can beat. I think Georgia can beat Indiana. Now, Georgia's defense is really good, and I'm not going to pick both games. I'll pick this game at the end, but I'm only going to pick these first-round games. I think Notre Dame, Georgia would be a hell of a matchup. And I think Indiana's got skilled guys. Georgia's going to rely on having that defense is going to have to win them the national championship because I'm not sold that Carson Beck's going to be back for these playoffs at all. Maybe he will, maybe not. If he comes back, the question is going to be, is he going to be limited? I don't know. We don't know that yet. We haven't really heard much, on that. So I'll pick this game at the end, but a line of 7, I think that's a really big line. I haven't bet the games yet. Right now, I'm leaning to bet Indiana, but again, haven't bet them yet. But I think 7 is a really big line for that game. The other one I was trying to do some thinking on is going to be this Clemson game. And this is a really tough game to pick because I don't think Clemson should have even beat SMU. Now, Clemson got by SMU because I would say SMU had a really, really bad first half in that game because SMU dominated Clemson in that second half, dominated them. So when I look at this game, I say to myself, okay, where's the opportunities? And I said, if I'm Steve Sarkisian, who I think is one of the best offensive minds in all of college football, I don't know how tight of a leash you have before you take Quinn Ewers out and go to Archie Manning. Because I would have probably already went to Archie. I don't think Quinn's played well at all. Now, maybe he's been banged up this year. I don't think he's really lived up to the hype. Now people are saying there's a Big Ten team that's offered him $4 million in NIL to come over and be their quarterback next year. Many think it's either Ohio State, which is where he transferred from years ago, or it's Oregon, which Oregon seems to find a way to go into the portal, run a quarterback for a year, and go win 10, 11 games, compete for a national championship. I could see that happening because NFL scouts are saying he should stay another year in college. he could benefit from another year. So, with that said, he's not going to stay at Texas. Archie Manning's the guy next year. So that there's no way Quinn Ewers stays. So my question is going to be, how long do you go in this game if Ewers, who has been a turnover machine the last 2 to 3 games, and Texas is another one of those teams. You go back and look at their schedule. They got beat to Georgia twice, which I think, okay, Georgia, those are 2 tough losses. They didn't really play a tough schedule in the SEC. They played one of the easier schedules in the country. Now, they have athletes all over the place. Their roster is as good as anybody's in the country. Their front four on defense is unreal. So I think they're going to be really, really tough up front. But again, Texas struggled to run the ball against Georgia. Now, Georgia's a different animal. Again, the common denominator in all these games is who's going to be able to run the football. And I don't think it's going to be any different in this game. And this one may be what quarterback doesn't make the biggest mistake. Cade Klubnik, the kid from Clemson, who I think Dabo's done a really good job with Klubnik this year. I think he's gotten better each week. And I do like the development of him. I think if this thing gets into a shootout, Clemson has skilled guys on the outside. It's not like Clemson doesn't have the skill players. I just think the knock on Dabo has just been this transfer portal. Like Dabo doesn't want to get into the portal. He believes in recruiting and developing. Where I think I just saw on Twitter the other night where I think he did go get a guy in a portal. I think it was like either offense or defensive lineman. So I think we got to see what happens with the quarterbacks. And listen, Dabo's been to 7 playoff games. He's led the team 4 of those playoff out of the 6 playoff appearances when they had the 14, the BCS. So I think he's got the experience. I don't think he's gonna panic. I think there's a lot of pressure on Sark in Texas because they have the better team. Texas should be able to blow out Clemson, but I don't think this game's going to be a blowout. And then the winner of this game is going to get Arizona State, who I think is one of the biggest sleeping giants in college football because they're better than what I thought they were going to be this year. They were picked last in the Big 12, and they won the Big 12. Really good offensive team. Kenny Dillingham, who I said is the youngest coach in the country, has done a fantastic job with that team. So again, with this Clemson game, Clemson beat SMU on a 56-yard field goal. We would be talking SMU in Texas in this game. Again, I don't think Texas has really been tested. The ACC has been down this year. So people are saying Texas rolls. I don't know. This is another one. I think the line was 6.5. I forgot to write the line down of this game. So if you're watching me, you can find the line for me. Or I can look it up here in just a minute. But I want to say it's like 6.5 to 8.5, somewhere in there. But I think it's going to be a really good, and I hope they're all good games, to be honest with you. I don't think any of these may be blowouts. But then people are going to say, what game has the potential? Can we see it upset? Because people want to see it upset, right? It's like March Madness. People love to see, the 5 versus 12s, the 7-10 games, maybe the 6-11 games. A lot of people are picking Tennessee to beat Ohio State. I don't know. I've repeated myself for the last month. I have to stick with my pick. I don't want to change my pick. But in August, I picked Ohio State to win the national championship. So I'm going to stick with the Buckeyes to win this. But what I'm going to be really interested to see when I watch this game on Saturday night, and they're the late game, they're the 8 o'clock game on Saturday night. It's going to be like 10 degrees in Columbus, which I think is awesome. If they start slow, like let's say it's 3rd down, 3rd and long, they don't get it, those fans are going to boo the hell out of Ryan Day. Like, the only thing that's nice for Chip Kelly is Chip Kelly's in the press box, so he doesn't have to really deal with the outside. They are going to boo the living you-know-what out of Ryan Day. And I can see it happen a lot. Like, if they get down early, I don't know how Ohio State's going to react. Is it going to be the Ohio State team that laid an egg against Michigan, or is it going to be the Ohio State team that put up 40, 50 points a game the entire season, and they just have a ton of talent all over the field? Chip Kelly utilizes the skill guys, and they just destroy Tennessee. That could happen. I think Tennessee's really good up front. Tennessee's got one of the better defenses in the country. If they can stop, contain Henderson and Judkins and even Will Howard, the run game. Um, Ohio State against Michigan rushed the ball 28 times for 77 yards. Not very good. Ohio State defensively, they're top 10 in both categories. So I think Ohio State's defense is going to be, they'll keep them in the game. But what version of Ryan Day are we going to get? Are we going to get the Ryan Day that coaches the game really tight like he did against Michigan? Or are we going to get the Ryan Day and Chip Kelly where let's spread the ball around, let's get it to our playmakers? They got to get the ball out of Will Howard's hands. I do not think they can put this game in Will Howard's hands. I think they got to get the ball out in space. They can run the ball a little bit, but I do not think they're going to be able to turn around and hand the ball off the entire game against Tennessee's front. Tennessee's front is really good. Now, Tennessee's got a quarterback in Nico Lamaive, the young freshman, who this will be a big game for him, but he's played in big games. He's played in front of 100,000 people in the SEC at night. So I think he'll be ready. I think Josh Heupel is one of the best coaches in college football. I love Josh Heupel. I think offensively he's as good as they come, and I think he'll dial up some schemes, for his team. And they got a kid by the name of Dylan Sampson who's rushed for over 1,500 yards for Tennessee, who's a really, really good back. And Tennessee runs the ball. I think they're averaging just over 200 yards. I'm looking down at my notes, maybe over 200 yards a game. So if they can run the football, as successful as Michigan did, they have a quarterback that can make plays with his legs, and he can also make plays with his arm. They got a real this is probably going to be the best. I think this is the best matchup of all of them. And it should be, right? It's the 8-9 game. Ohio State's a 7.5-point favorite in Columbus. I think that's a huge line for this game. Huge line. I actually would tell you right now, I would bet Tennessee because I think it's a big line, and I think Tennessee has a shot to beat them. Now, the one thing with Tennessee is Nico's been sacked 24 times on the year. And I think Jim Knowles has done a fantastic job this year disguising his coverages, blitz packages. Like defensively, they play really well against Michigan. They should have beat Michigan. The offense let them down. The defense has not let them down either. They're top 10 against the run, and they're top 10 against the pass. I think overall they're like the third or fourth best defense in college football. So they're going to be ready to play. It's going to be on the outside. Can you get Jeremiah Smith involved, who's an unbelievable talent? Can you get Emeka Egbuka the ball? Can you get the senior Cardell Tate involved? And can you run the ball? They got two really good backs. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are two of the best backs in college football. It's probably the best running back room in college football. And if they can get that group going, they'll beat Tennessee. But the first 5 to 6 minutes are really going to tell the story of this game. And if I'm Josh Heupel, if I win the toss, I'm taking the football. I know a lot of coaches today, and even in high school, they want to defer to the second half and they want to put the defense on the field. My dad will tell you, and I'm the same way. We want the football. We want the football to go down and try to have a good opening drive. Let's go make a statement. If they receive the football and they go down the field and score, my goodness, 110,000 people are going to boo the living bejesus out of Ryan Day and Ohio State. And then I want to see how that team reacts in that type of environment. Remember, if you're Ohio State, the last time you were in that environment, you got beat by your rival for the 4th time, and you got the flag planted at midfield. You do not want those fans to turn. That game will turn in a heartbeat. Tennessee's going to travel. And I thought I read where they weren't selling they only limited Tennessee to like so many tickets. I'm going to tell you what, that's half that stadium. I would guarantee you 40,000 people are in orange for Tennessee. I think you're going to see a lot of Tennessee fans travel. Now, the ticket prices for some of these games are absolutely ridiculous. And then let alone, imagine trying to get a hotel now. My wife and I, when we went to Columbus, it was really tough to get a hotel, and they played Purdue, who was terrible. And then the one year we went to Happy Valley 2 years ago, we were there for the Penn State Michigan game where both teams were ranked in the top 5. We stayed like an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes outside of Happy Valley because we couldn't get closer. Most of those hotels were like, I didn't pay this, but most of the hotels that we looked at were like $700 to $1,000 a night, and that was for Michigan Penn State. That's not the playoff games. What's gonna cost to go to these games? But the first 5 or 6 minutes, it's gonna tell the whole story for me for the entire game. I don't even have to. I could tell you how that game is going to go right out of the gate because I'm telling you right now, if they get behind and they go run, incomplete pass, punt, that stadium is going to go bananas in there. And again, I think Tennessee can match them talent-wise. Ohio State is still, to me, the most talented team in the country. If they can put the Michigan game behind and they can come out flying up-tempo, no huddle, utilize those playmakers, they'll beat Tennessee. And I think the following week when they play Oregon, I think they can beat the Ducks. So this one I think will probably be the best matchup, but I think it'll be a really good one. I think it'll be telling them in the first 6 minutes. And then lastly, but not least, SMU Penn State. This is another big line. 8.5 is a lot of points in this game. And I think this is going to come down to a few things. And I can see, like, Penn State has the easiest path. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, they benefited big time from this. And again, I think they should reseed this thing after the first week because Penn State should not have an easier path than Oregon, who, by the way, the number 1 seed in the playoff gets to play either Ohio State or Tennessee, which is crazy. And Penn State gets a chance, if they win, to play Boise State, who, I don't know, maybe Boise State on the blue turf. I don't know, maybe they'll be better than I think. But anyways, we can't look that far. We got to get through this one. Penn State, to me, is going to come down to how Drew Allar plays, who just announced he's coming back for his senior season, which good for him. Bad for Penn State because their backup quarterback hit the transfer portal, which their backup quarterback, they had some packages in for him down on the goal line and even some Wildcat stuff. So that's a big loss for them because something happens with Drew Allar. They're now down to their third string quarterback who probably has not taken a lot of snaps throughout the season. I was really impressed the last time Penn State was on the field. That Big Ten championship game against Oregon, the way that game started, I said Oregon's going to destroy Penn State. Not even going to be close. Penn State went toe-to-toe. I really liked the game plan. I really liked the decisions that Drew Allar made in that game. I really liked the decisions he made using his feet for that game, using his legs. And I think we need to see more of that in this matchup. Penn State's is another one. They like to run the football. It's going to be cold. It's going to be a whiteout. I think this is the noon game on Saturday, which this would have been another good one at night. But I get it. You got to put the Ohio State game at night. That's a bigger game than this game. To me, it's going to come down to is going to be how does SMU defend Tyler Warren, the tight end, who won the Mackey Award, I think, for the best tight end in the country. 88 catches for over 1,000. This is an interesting stat. He's got 88 catches for over 1,000 yards. The next closest receiver for Penn State, you ready for this one? 39 catches. A tight end has 88 catches. The next closest is Harrison Wallace with 39 catches. That's crazy to think about. Now, the two backs, Singleton and Katron Allen, they love to throw to the backs out of the backfield. So, they do split it up. You got to find a way, and teams have tried this year. They've tried to play man coverage with a safety over the top. They've tried to play zone coverage. They've tried to do a lot of different things. The best way, I think, for SMU is going to be, can they get to the quarterback? Penn State's going to run the football. Penn State is going to run the football north and south, and they're going to get the ball to their tight end. That's what they're going to do. If they can throw the ball a little bit, if they can get the ball to Wallace or maybe the backs and spread the field a little bit, I think Penn State can really run this thing up on SMU. Penn State's really good up front on both sides of the ball. Defensively, they're one of the best run defenses in the country. Um, but I think SMU is a really good story. A really good story this year because, again, I thought they dominated Clemson in the second half. If they started the first half the way they finished the second half against Clemson, we'd probably be talking SMU is one of the buys, one of the 4 buys, because I do think SMU. And if you followed me over the last month or so, I've been really high on SMU. I think SMU can beat Penn State. Do I think it's going to happen? No, just because it's going to be a whiteout game in front of 100 and something thousand people. So I think they're going to be up against that. If you haven't seen this SMU team play, you need to make sure you watch this game because they have 2 of the best players in the country. Brashard Smith, the wide receiver, or excuse me, the running back is really good. He's a 1,200-yard back. The quarterback's only a sophomore, thrown for over 3,000 yards in Kevin Jennings. And he's also ran the ball too. So I think this has the potential to be a really good game. Do I think it happens? I don't know. I'm leaning a lot of the home teams, and I'm just going back and I'm just looking through my stuff. I'm like, all right, I got to do these picks right now. Do I see it upset? Man, I don't know. I don't know. Let's try to pick these. I mean, this Indiana Notre Dame, I think this is going to be a really good game. I think this could be a lot closer. I think there's been some people on Twitter, and some of the experts have picked Indiana to beat Notre Dame. I don't see it. I think Notre Dame can win the national championship, as crazy as that is because of the injury to Carson Beck. I think Notre Dame can get to the national championship with the path. I think if they get by Indiana, I think they match up well with Georgia without a Carson Beck. Even with Carson Beck, I think Notre Dame can beat Georgia and find themselves in the national championship. I could see it happening. So this game on Friday night, as much as I love Curt Cignetti, I do like Marcus Freeman, even though he's a Buckeye. I love Marcus Freeman. I think he's one of the best young coaches in America. I do think Notre Dame will find a way to run the football, and I do think they're going to find a way to get Riley Leonard the ball out of his hands, make some easy throws. I'm going to take Notre Dame. I'm going to lay the 7 in this game. I'm gonna take them. I am going to give Notre Dame the 7, and I'm just looking right now because I was trying to see what the line was, and let's see here. The line for the playoff, and it was Clemson, Texas right now. This is that's the biggest line, 12. That's a monster line for a football game, 12. I don't know. I might have to sway I'm going to pick that game last. Okay. So I do I like Notre Dame laying the 7. SMU, Penn State. I think Penn State, if this game was on a neutral field, I'd say I think SMU has a shot. Maybe SMU keeps this thing close. But I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to lay the 8.5 in this one too at home. And again, I think Penn State has a really good chance to make a run at the national championship. If they can get through this one, and then they'll go play at Boise State, who I think it's a really good matchup. They match up well with Boise State. I think they match up well with both these teams. And in games like this, and even like in March Madness, where it comes down to matchups, like up tempo and offense and basketball, let's try to slow them down. Then you have the offenses in basketball where they want to get into the half court, but then there's other teams that want to run. I think Penn State's a tough matchup for SMU. I think they're a really tough matchup for Boise State because Boise State's going to pound Ashton Jeanty, and I don't think you can pound them 40 times and beat Penn State. But I'm not want to get myself ahead of myself here. We're just focusing on the initial round. I'm going to take James Franklin, who struggles in big games, but I think Penn State by double digits against SMU. All right. We're not going to go to this Clemson, Texas game. As much as I really want to see, I really wouldn't mind seeing Dabo Swinney win this game. I think they'll match up well inside with Texas, but Clemson doesn't belong in this game. SMU should have beat Clemson. So I'm going to ride with Texas. I am going to make a prediction on this. I think that if Archie Manning gets in the game for Texas, now they may bring him in. they've been bringing him in to run the ball out of the shotgun because he's a good runner, physical kid. I think if they bring him in for a series or two and they open it up and they let him throw the ball, like if they bring him in down on the goal line inside the red zone, inside the 20, I have a really good feeling. I don't think they take him out. I think it's his game to lose. Now, I think it stinks for Quinn Ewers because having to play a game where you're saying to yourself, I got the kid behind me that everybody wants to see. Flashy name. Every time he comes into the game, they're cheering crazy for Archie Manning. He's your quarterback of the future. I think that's tough because if he throws an interception, first thing everybody's going to say is, all right, is Sark going to pull the plug? Sark going to pull the trigger? We go with Archie Manning, who I think they should anyway, because I think he gives them the best chance. But if Ewers goes out and plays well and lights things up, which he could, hats off to Quinn Ewers. But I think if you see Arch in there, you may not see him come out unless they put him in for that run package, wildcat package. That might be a different story. I think Texas rolls. I think whether Arch plays, Quinn plays, I think they roll Clemson. I would take Texas, and I would take them laying the 12 points in this one. I think this one will probably be the most lopsided game of the crew. So give me Texas minus the 12 points in this game. Last but not least, Tennessee. Well, you know I've picked Ohio State to win the national championship. So I got to tell you that I'd have to say I got to stay with my pick. However, I would take Tennessee getting the 7.5 because I think this game may come down to a last-minute drive. And again, I think the pressure in this game is 110% on Ohio State. They have all the pressure in the world in this game. And Kirk Herbstreit said this perfectly. And of course, Columbus fans, all they did was badmouth Kirk Herbstreit for it. And by the way, Kirk Herbstreit's son committed to play quarterback at Michigan, which he wasn't even a 4 or 5 star kid. I don't even think he had a rating. And he committed to Sharon Moore to play quarterback at Michigan, which he's never going to play. He's never going to play quarterback. They got Bryce Underwood, the kid. They just paid him $12 million to come in, and then they're going to go get a quarterback in the transfer portal. So Herbstreit's kid's not even going to probably play. But just think about that. Kirk Herbstreit, who lived and played in Columbus, who, by the way, his twin boys played for Clemson. They were walk-ons. His youngest son, who just committed, is the supposedly the better athlete of the 3 boys, just committed to Michigan. Think about that again. Kirk Herbstreit, who played quarterback for the Buckeyes, who they ran out of town because he made comments about him in the media, who, again, he's an analyst. They ran him out, and now Herbstreit lives in Nashville. Now his son goes to Michigan, who they want to run him out of town. But he made the comments, and I think I agree with Herbie. The best thing that could have happened for Ohio State is to open up on the road, not at Ohio State. Because, again, 3rd down, got a punt. Will Howard throws an interception. Something crazy happens. They get behind early. The Boo Birds are going to come out quickly. And how they react to that will be a different story. Now, maybe they come out flying, pedal to the metal, and they just lay 50 on Tennessee. And you say, holy cow, that's the Ohio State team that can win a national championship and has the best roster in America. So I'm going to take Ohio State because I picked them to win it all. But I am going to take Tennessee getting the 7.5 points because I think that's a lot. And I think these will all be pretty decent games. There's got to be an upset somewhere. If I had to try to say where's the upset come from, I don't think the 8-9's an upset. So I don't think Tennessee beating Ohio State's an upset because I think Tennessee's got a lot of talent too. I probably would say I think Indiana can beat Notre Dame. I don't see SMU beating Penn State in front of 100,000 people in the whiteout game. I don't see that. South Bend, I think you're going to have Indiana fans there. It's a battle of the state of Indiana. I think Indiana, this matchup is okay. Again, you look at the matchups, I think this one is probably the most intriguing one because offense, defensive lines are both good. Indiana's got the best run defense in the country. Notre Dame can't protect Riley Leonard at times. Indiana's got a lot of weapons on the outside, so we'll see. So I think that's the most intriguing matchup, and I think that's where the upset can happen. Don't see Clemson being able to keep it close with Texas. Tennessee, as I said, 8 versus 9. It's like in basketball. 8-9 is not an upset. I don't know. I don't see SMU going into Happy Valley and beating Penn State. Could they keep it close? I don't know. If Penn State plays like they did against Oregon in this game, I think they destroy SMU. So that would probably be my picks. I do want to give a shout out today. The Ivy League has announced that next year and the years going forward, the winner of the Ivy League will get into the FCS playoff. So for years, the winner of the Ivy League just probably gets a ring and they're Ivy League champs. Well, now, excuse me, the Ivy League is going to get a berth in the playoff, which I think is great for college football for the FCS. So hats off to the Ivy League. So, all right, well, I'm out of time. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate everybody following me on here on Chalk Talk. I'll let you know if I'm going to be doing anything next week with the holidays. I'll let you know on Sunday with the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch if we're going to do a show, one more show possibly before Christmas. But if I don't do a show next week and I do not do the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch on Sunday, I want to make sure that I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Hopefully everybody's safe and enjoys time with their family and friends. So on behalf of myself here on Chalk Talk and the Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon right here on the Rock Pile.